This is Real News Media TV, coverage you can trust. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates. One of St. James's most wanted captured weeping. Nikilo Akilia Lewis, one of the most wanted alleged gunmen in St. James, is now in custody. He was captured after police intercepted a car he was traveling in along the Reading Main Road in Montego Bay yesterday afternoon. Lewis, who resides in Lilliput, St. James, was wanted for murder and a shooting with intent. Another man who was in the Nissan AD wagon with him was also arrested. Lewis wept openly as he pleaded with the officers to save his life, a police source said. The cowards who are willing to kill unarmed civilians are so nervous when held by the police, said the official. 3 weeks ago, Lewis was listed among persons of interest by Deputy Superintendent of Police Clive Wright. The police say Lewis was implicated in the murder of Shivane Stevens, otherwise called Alex, who was shot dead in Ocean Heights, Lilliput on January 4. Dancehall artist Skeng arrested at Kingston Airport. Dancehall artist Skeng was arrested at the Norman Manley International Airport in Kingston earlier yesterday. The Jamaica Constabulary Force released a brief statement on Twitter yesterday evening. The police said Skeng was charged with disorderly behavior and resisting arrest following an incident at the airport. No additional details were provided. 2 arrested in connection with international money laundering ring. 2 men were arrested in Jamaica on Tuesday at the request of U.S. authorities in connection with their alleged involvement in a sophisticated international money laundering organization which handled millions of U.S. dollars in drug trafficking proceeds from Colombian cartels through the U.S., Caribbean, and European banking systems. A third person in Jamaica is being sought. He has been identified as St. Devon Anthony Cover. The 2 Jamaicans, Dennis Raymond Rowe and Steve Wright Donald Flicht, were among 19 individuals indicted on Tuesday in Boston, Massachusetts, as part of the massive probe. A statement from the U.S. Justice Department on Tuesday afternoon said the U.S. $1 million was also seized from corporate bank accounts and other investigative activity. Almost 3,000 kilograms of cocaine, with a street value of more than US $90 million, has allegedly been traced back to the money laundering organization. This includes approximately 1,193 kilograms of cocaine seized at sea 60 miles south of Jamaica in July 2019. The Justice Department says in addition to the arrest of the 2 Jamaicans, 3 defendants were taken into custody in Florida on Tuesday morning and will make an initial appearance in federal court at a later date. It's reported that on April 26 this year, 12 defendants were arrested in Colombia at the request of the U.S. 1 defendant was arrested in Orlando, Florida. The Justice Department says the United States will seek the extradition of the Jamaicans and Colombians to the District of Massachusetts. According to the charging documents, in or about October 2016, U.S. law enforcement began an investigation into a sophisticated money laundering organization located primarily in Barranquilla, Colombia. During an extensive 5-year probe, the organization allegedly laundered more than US $6 million in drug proceeds through intermediate banks in the U.S. and additional proceeds through banks in the Caribbean and Europe by the use of the Colombian black market peso exchange. It is alleged that by using the BMPE, the defendants conspired to conceal drug trafficking activity and the proceeds from law enforcement and evade currency exchange requirements in the U.S. and Colombia through the illegal currency exchange process. Cousins calls for probe into illegal importation of chicken parts. Opposition spokesman on agriculture Lawton Cousins has called for an investigation into what he says is the illegal importation of chicken parts into Jamaica under the chicken back import regime. The Integrity Commission had criticized the Ministry of Agriculture for giving preferential treatment to applicants for chicken back import permits on the basis of prior importation history and suggested that the probity of the award process was compromised and hindered competition. Last year, the government announced the system had been revamped, but Mr. Cousins says the process is still not transparent and has criticized the granting of permits to companies outside the meat trade, calling it a wrong and a very dangerous practice.
Just this morning, I got a call from a trader that indicated that he was being approached with illegal leg quarter imports. Minister, are you aware of this? And if you are not aware of it, Minister, I urge you to launch an investigation as soon as possible to treat with this issue. That is wrong. This is a very dangerous practice. Let me explain why the practice of granting import permits for chicken back to people with very little to zero institutional involvement in the meat trade is very, very dangerous. With minimal credibility to lose as institutional traders, these individuals take risk by bringing in dutiable poultry cuts and other prime meats into the country using the advantage of the duty-free status afforded to chicken back.
Jamaica Customs Agency breaches still not addressed. Jamaica Customs Agency is now under increased scrutiny after Parliament's Public Accounts Committee on Tuesday heard that a number of breaches which resulted in financial exposure of more than $2 billion and uncollected revenues of more than $664 million have not been addressed. This prompted Government Member of Parliament Moreland Wilson to ask for an independent body to look into the deficiencies. Allegations made by a whistleblower had triggered a special probe by the Auditor General's Department of the Jamaica Customs Agency's private bonded warehouses and bunkering operations. The audit covered the period from 2016 to 2021. Mr. Wilson said it was alarming that major loopholes highlighted at Jamaica Customs still existed.
This is very worrying, and we should at some point develop some mechanism to strengthen what we have, because despite we're looking at this report, you guys have done some things very well, and I think we're not talking about that today, but I just want to remind the committee that you guys have done tremendously well in some other areas. But in this one, we have seen where we have massive risk and exposure to the Jamaican people, and where our tax dollars may be leaking, and we cannot verify whether it is or not because the data is just not there.
Public Accounts Committee Chairman Julian Robinson noted that of all the issues raised by the Auditor General's Department, only one of two had been resolved, while the majority of them remain in view.
Of all the issues raised, only one from the Auditor General's perspective, or two, have been resolved, but the majority of them remain in view. Given that they remain in view, the PAC is interested in ensuring that those issues are resolved. So I would want the Auditor General to report back to the PAC in a 3-month period, having gone back to Customs on the specific outstanding matters that remain in view.
JPs and people with disabilities to get a special needs card, says Green. Jamaicans with disabilities and the justices of the peace will be issued with special national identification cards, a move that will make it easier for them to conduct their business while saving the government millions of dollars. Minister without portfolio in the office of the Prime Minister Floyd Green, who is in charge of the rollout of the national identification and the registration system, said this is part of making it easier for Jamaicans to do business. Green was speaking Tuesday while making his contribution to the 2022-2023 sectoral debate in the House of Representatives. The power that this card holds is the ease of use and the absence of traditional written proof and eyewitnesses to say you are who you say you are. And as we amend our legislation to reflect our step into the digital world, it should be noted that where we are going is to remove the need for multiple unique identifiers and move into where your one national ID can be used for your NIS, TRN, and ultimately where your national identification card can be shown as proof that you are licensed to drive, said Green. He stated that persons with disabilities need the same access to services as those without disabilities, but noted that the reality is that oftentimes such persons are without identification. Green said special provisions will be made for people with disabilities under the needs. We have met and deliberated with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities and have agreed on using the international access sign to represent persons with disabilities at the rear of the national identification card. That decision is optional, however, and the persons with disabilities will decide if the sign should appear at the rear of their national ID. This will ensure that persons with disabilities are treated with appropriate regard and provided with the access necessary to conduct their businesses and functions, said Green, adding that the move will save the government approximately $160 million instead of having to print separate cards for persons with disabilities. Regarding JPs, Green noted that their services are far more than identity verification, but he said many JPs do not have an identification card and oftentimes have to use their seals to prove that they are JPs. To this end, JPs will also be represented by an identifier at the rear of the national identification card. This will also save the government of Jamaica $7.2 million instead of printing separate cards for the JPs, Green said. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates.